mentioned before that some people feel the one white cape character in Rogue One relates to. And there was a lot of people that loved the expanded universe. There was a whole series of stories and a timeline that were kind of all interconnected that picked up the story from after Return of the Jedi. And when Disney took over, they took the expanded universe, relabeled it Legends, and it is not canon. Those are there for people to enjoy and read if they want to as separate stories, but they are not canon. And there's a whole movement right now, for those that don't know, there's a whole movement of Star Wars fans out there that are begging Lucasfilm to bring back the expanded universe and to do those stories, and Lucasfilm's not going to. And I agree with Disney and Lucasfilm on that 100%. They have the opportunity now to grow the franchise for decades to come and provide us with new stories and new movies. And I love the idea that everything new that comes out is all interconnected and tied together. To me, having everything be canon, apart from the Lego shows, Pablo Hidalgo, again from the Story Group, was very keen to say that the Lego shows are just Lego. They shouldn't violate the canon in any way, but they also should not be taken as canon themselves, because there's some new Lego movies coming out. The Freemaker series, we've talked about this. There's a Force Awakens Lego video game coming out. You know, those items are not traditional canon, even though they shouldn't violate the regular canon. But this movement out there, these individuals that continue, somebody put up a billboard, I think it was in San Francisco, put up a billboard petitioning for Disney to bring back the expanded universe. And look, if you enjoy the expanded universe, I get it. You know, everybody's got a right to their opinion, but I guess from my point of view, why would you want to do that? The Story Group has already said, Kathleen Kennedy's already said, that they will go back to the expanded universe now Legends, and they will pull ideas from them if they're good and use them in future stories. So it's almost as if there was something that was really good that was in the expanded universe, you may end up getting it somewhere down the line in a comic book or a novel or a cartoon or a live-action TV show or a movie, whether it's a saga film or a spin-off movie. I personally wouldn't want to see... Again, to me, it dilutes what Star Wars is and what makes it special. For example, if there's a story, Shadows of the Empire, that, if I'm not mistaken, takes place after Empire Strikes Back, before Return of the Jedi, and it was a comic that turned into a graphic novel kind of thing. Really cool story, interesting characters in there. And, I have it. I've read it several times. It's probably one of the pieces of expanded universe that I've spent the most time with. The idea behind it was do everything for it without making a movie. So they created a soundtrack for it. They had, again, the comic book for it. They released toys for it. They just never made a movie. If Disney decided to release that, make Shadows of the Empire, I suppose you could make it fit into the canon, but if they released it and said this does not relate to the canon, it's just a one-off film, that just causes a lot of confusion and dilutes what the movie would be, having it not tied in some way. Going into Rogue One, I'm really excited knowing this movie goes right into A New Hope, even though it's a standalone film. The events still take place on a timeline related to the saga movies. And that to me makes all of this really special. It makes every release that comes out special. There's a new book coming out called Bloodlines, and it's about Princess Leia prior to The Force Awakens, written by Claudia Gray, who wrote another novel that spanned the original trilogy called Lost Stars. It's amazing. But there are portions of the book Bloodlines that Rian Johnson, who's filming episode 8, had a hand in. He went to the author and said, hey, we don't know what those items are yet, but he went to the author and said, hey, I'd like you to include this, this, and this into your book to provide a bit of backstory as I work on my story for episode 8. We know that we get to see a little bit of the the creation of the Resistance. We know that we find out a little bit more about where the First Order came from in this book. I'm planning on reading it. It comes out here, I think, on May 3rd in a couple days. But again, that's what makes a book like this cool, because you can go and you can read it, and you know that not only does this have implications for Episode 8, but it certainly is going to shed light on what we're going to see, or what we already saw in The Force Awakens as well. So getting back to Rogue One just briefly, Mads Mikkelsen. For those, probably the quickest way that I can tell you who he is if you saw Casino Royale, the James Bond movie. He plays Lashif, the guy with the villain with the bleeding eye. He was also in what was it? The remake of Clash of the Titans with Sam Worthington. Great actor, really interesting character actor, interesting face, just a very imposing individual. He was being interviewed on a European television show and came out and said that he was going to be playing Felicity Jones, who's Jyn Erso in Rogue One, her dad. And it was funny because when he said it, he kind of realized fairly quickly that he probably shouldn't have said that. But again, I think this goes back to the fact that we're going to know more about these characters moving forward. Now, he, after that, did another interview, and I'm actually on MakingStarWars.net. According to the Standard Online, speaking to the UK magazine, Mads Mikkelsen gave more details, not only about his role in the film, but also some iconic characters we might see. When asked if Mark Hamill or Carrie Fisher or members of the original trilogy had joined the cast on the set, he said, "Some of them. I won't reveal too much. There are iconic characters in our film and also characters you've never heard of. It's a mix." Now, I don't think we're going to see Princess Leia or obviously Luke Skywalker. Maybe Han Solo, a young Han Solo that they're still casting in this movie, but I don't think you're going to see Princess Leia or Luke Skywalker. Maybe a quick Princess Leia at the end when they hand off, or her taking off in the Tantive with the Death Star plans. We do know there's rumors that obviously Darth Vader is supposed to be in it, and that Grand Moff Tarkin might be in it as well. Again, I go back to the Emperor being in this movie. I really think he's going to have some type of presence, even if it's just in a back-to-tank because he's been injured. He also talks a little bit about his role in the movie and Jyn Erso's, Felicity Jones' past. He says, again, he recently revealed that he plays the father of Jyn Erso, and he said that the Gareth Edwards-directed film will also feature flashbacks to Jyn's childhood. I spend a lot of time with Jones, and she's a wonderful actress. I play her dad at the time of Felicity, and I play her dad, Felicity Jones, being grown up, and I play her dad when she's younger, so we jump back and forth in time. That comment is the one that stuck out the most to me, because it tells me that, again, this movie being a standalone film is going to be more expansive than I imagined. I guess in my mind, I think of this movie more like an episode of Clone Wars or an episode of Rebels, where it's fairly simple in story and we move through it quickly and not very broad in its scope. And it's beginning to sound like, no, this seems to be much a film of much more, or of more, I should say, epic proportions than I imagined. And we've heard them say this is a Saving Private Ryan. This is they got the cameraman, the director of photography for I think Black Hawk Down and Zero Dark 30. And so, I begin to think about those films, and I start to go, wow, I'm getting even more excited for this movie. Because I think they're going to be jumping in time and showing Felicity when she was a kid. I mean, again, more expansive in terms of their stories. I think it's going to be a lot broader because we're really going to get to know these characters in a lot bigger way than what I had expected. And again, I'm so used to watching Rebels, and that's probably the better example. And in Rebels, we've been learning about these characters, but we really don't know their full backstories because we're still being exposed to them. We get to see them in little chunks. And then you think, oh, okay, well, with a 2-hour movie, maybe 2 hour and 15, 2 hour 20, they're going to have to get all that in there. And so this is really going to broaden this movie out and make it a much more sprawling story than I had imagined. It makes sense because going into it, I was really thinking it was small. Just in terms of before we saw the trailer. And then you see the trailer and you go, whoa, that looks a lot bigger than I thought. And then you hear this and I go, wow, I think it's going to be even bigger than that. So I'm really hyped. And I mean, I think that goes without saying. And I remember Sam Witwer on Jedi Council, again, the voice of Darth Maul in Rebels, making the comment that if Rogue One works, then we're going to be able to see more individual stories of characters we may not have met before. And that's what I find so interesting about what they've done with Rogue One being the first movie, because they didn't go the route of doing a Boba Fett movie first. They didn't go the route of doing a Han Solo spinoff movie first. We may get those. We will hopefully get an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie with Ewan McGregor set between episodes 3 and 4 to find out what the crazy old hermit was doing on Tatooine for all those years while Luke was growing up on Uncle Owen and Aunt Beroom's moisture farm. But Disney didn't start with that. They gave us a bunch of brand new characters. And that was, I mean, to me, again, this is where the story group comes in that I was talking about. I mean, you want to talk about the genius of what they're doing is that they're immediately expanding with the spinoff film, the Star Wars universe, by bringing in a bunch of characters that we've never heard of before. That now could we possibly get a Jyn Erso book at some point in time? One of these other characters that are being played in the movie. I mean, there's just so many places that they can go. And that's what they have to do. That's what Disney has to do, because that's where Disney's at a disadvantage as it relates to the Star Wars universe when you compare it to, say, the Marvel universe. Because the Marvel has decades worth of superheroes to go and pull from. I mean, at some point in the Marvel movies, we're not going to be having movies. I mean, we're going to have to move off of what we're going to see in Civil War next week. We're going to have to move off of Iron Man and Captain America and Spider-Man and the Hulk and Black Widow. I mean, we're going to have to get a new group of Avengers just like they did in the comic books, and we're going to have to, but they have them. They're waiting there. Star Wars doesn't have that, especially since they got rid of, again, the expanded universe. Star Wars has the movies and a certain select set of characters. They're going to have to create new ones. And so out of the gate, they did that with The Force Awakens, with introducing those brand new characters. And now, obviously, as we move forward in the saga, and now, obviously, we're going back in time for a prequel in Rogue One and getting a whole new set of characters there. All right, let's go and switch gears.
There has been an awakening. Have you felt it?
All right, earlier last week, the Royals, Prince Henry and Harry, right? They visited the set at Pinewood Studios of Episode 8. And this was really interesting from I'm not a Brit, so I don't know this kind of stuff sort of perspective. It was interesting to see comments from those who live in Europe who are Star Wars fans to see the Royals visiting the set of Episode 8 and how frustrated they were. Basically saying, why do these individuals, just because they're the Royals, get to go and visit the Episode 8 set? There was this whole... I never knew there was any issue with this, but apparently, because I read a lot of it, there's this whole mindset attached to the Royals where people in Europe look at them like we in America look at the Kardashians. How scary is that, right? The cool thing about it was they took a bunch of pictures on set. And while you saw a lot of props that obviously were taken from The Force Awakens, there was one particular picture. Well, there was a picture that saw an X-Wing in the background, same type of X-Wing that we saw in The Force Awakens, and so those are going to obviously return. One of the complaints, albeit minor, from a fan like me, was that we didn't have much diversity in terms of spaceships in The Force Awakens. It looks like that's changing in Episode 8 because there's a picture of Prince Henry, I don't care. He's the redheaded one, sitting in the cockpit. Now, the shot was up close, so you couldn't see the whole ship, but it was clear he was sitting in the cockpit of an A-Wing. And not just any A-Wing. There's a couple different shots of him with Mark Hamill standing off to the side of the A-Wing, and he's in the cockpit with the canopy up. So you can tell it's an A-wing. But what's interesting about it is it had some differences to the traditional A-wing